Hello, everybody. Hello, Kat.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hello, Laura. Lovely to see you. Long time no see. I can't hear you. I can see you're there. Hello, Françoise.
Hi.
Hello, how are you? I hope you... And Georgie. Hello, Georgie.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, great.
Lovely to have you here.
I had
So,
a colleague that wanted to join as well.
oh yeah, please let them in. Please do send them the link.
I'll call her quickly.
Yeah, please do. We'll just let a few more people in.
Hey, Shiv, just join on the link I sent you. It's fine. Come on in.
Yeah, absolutely. More the merrier. Just to let you know that we're already live on Facebook, so if you prefer to have your cameras off, do feel free. Hello, Alex. How are you?
Hi.
Are you well?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, great. And just letting a few more people in. Is the connection all right for everybody? You can hear me okay?
It's fine for me.
Yeah,
What-
brilliant.
yeah.
Brilliant. Hello, Aurélien.
Hello, Anne.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good, good. And Vincent is just coming in as well. Hello, Vincent. Hello, Vincent, can you hear us? Hello, how are you? Good, good, great. Excellent. Hello, Ingrid. Great to see everybody here. Lovely. Okay, I think that's just about everybody. I don't think there's anyone else. Okay, just to remind everybody that we're going live on Facebook, so if you prefer to have your cameras off, feel free. When it's going live, they basically just see me, I think. But just if you want to be sure. Okay, I think we're just about got everybody in. I'd also just ask you to keep your microphones off. It just makes the recording a little bit easier. There will be a bit of time for discussion, particularly at the end. So then we'll put the microphones off and we switch off the Facebook, and then we can have a good chat. Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming. It's absolutely brilliant to see you here. Thank you. And thank you for giving up your Monday evening. Just before we start, let me just ask, Georgie, has your friend arrived? I don't want to start without her.
She's not here. She's not here at the moment.
Okay.
But I would just definitely start without her.
Okay. Well, I should see her when if she's at the door, I should see her. So, yeah, I'll let her in. No problem. Okay, so we'll make a quick start. It should be about an hour all in, and we will, as I said, we will have some time at the end for discussion. Now, I do understand that some of you have bedtimes and things like that to organise with children. Do feel free to hop in and hop out, and the replay will be available. So yeah, please don't feel that you're stuck there if things come up. I totally understand, totally get that. Okay, so just a quick introduction from me. So I'm Anne Collins, and I'm host of the Leaders Who Love What They Do podcast. If you haven't already discovered that, do click on the link and see what you think. I'm a leadership coach. I've had many years in education. I've had lots of leadership positions in education, and actually I still have a language school here in France. So I have 2 businesses at the moment. So I'm very much in touch with leadership still, very much active, but also doing coaching as well. So I specialise in really trying to help people to rethink and transform their leadership by looking at their mindset, by looking at confidence issues, communication skills in particular, and bringing all of that together to create very high performing teams. So that's a little bit about me. Do feel free to ask me questions as we go along. So just a couple of things. The Zoom codes will be the same all week. So if you have tonight's, you have the same one all week. So that is easy. I hope you've got the workbook now that I sent out. I hope that you've managed to download that. If not, if you want to just pop it up on your screen, you might find that useful. Okay. So I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind, if you're happy to, please introduce yourself in the chat. Maybe say your name, where you're from, and your leadership position. So you should find the chat at the bottom of your screen, and do feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself to the others in this group. Now that won't appear on Facebook. It will just be for us here. So do go ahead. I'll just open my chat so I can see. So hello, Ingrid. Lovely to see you. In fact, it's amazing. We've got such a wonderful mix of people here from France, from Switzerland, from the UK. So it's really lovely to have that diversity. Hello, Georgie and Françoise. And Alex, great, Laura. We've got quite a few from education, from engineering. Some are CEOs, some are working in other industries. A whole range of leadership positions. So welcome to you all. I hope also that during this week you'll have a chance to connect with each other as well. And I hope that during the discussion times you'll make those connections, because I always think that is probably one of the best things about these courses. Okay. So what I would like to do first is to have a little think about what are the characteristics of a courageous leader in your opinion. So this week we're talking all about leading with courage. So what I would like you to think is, what is your definition of a courageous leader? So because this week is not about me giving you a blueprint and a list of things to check off. Absolutely not. This is about you finding your definition of courageous leadership, of what you want to be, your view, your vision of what's going to be right for you, what's right for your context, and where you want to go ultimately in the next year or whatever timescale you have in mind. However, having said that, I am going to give you some points to consider. So rather than giving you a menu of things that I think defines courageous leadership, I'm hoping that I'm going to give you some ideas to reflect on, to think about, and then to make your own mind up and to discuss as well along the way. So to start, I'd like you to consider how you feel about your leadership role right now. And we're going to do that in a slightly different way to usual. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to share with you one of my favourite paintings. Now, I'm sure that many of you will know this painting. Let me just... So I just have to do a little bit of technology to find it for you and to share my screen. And this is a wonderful painting that many of you, especially if you're teachers, you will probably have taught it at some point. And it is by Turner, a British painter, Can you see that? If you could just give me a thumbs up to let me know that you can see that. Great. So this is a picture called Rain, Steam and Speed. Now, for those who are not in the UK, this is probably your image of the UK with a lot of fog, a lot of steam, a lot of rain. So, but actually, to be fair, we've had a lot of rain here in Belfort on the Swiss border this week, so we're not immune to a bit of rain as well. Now, when we look at this painting, what I think is amazing about it is that you have the train on the right-hand side that is coming really towards us. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at various places on this picture because there are people hidden in the picture. And as we go through it, I would like you to think, where do you feel you are in your leadership when you look at this picture? Do you, for example, do you feel like you are on that train? Does it feel that that is where you are at the moment, with the rain, with the wind, and moving forward very fast? Or, and when we look at some other places, or do you feel a little bit different? Maybe you're going to feel like you're more on the very peaceful boat heading towards the sunshine. Or maybe you're in a totally different place. Maybe you're in the sky. Maybe you're high up above in the clouds looking down on your role. So I want you to think in this very different kind of way. Where do you feel that you are with your leadership? Now, for those people who are listening to the podcast, there is a link in the show notes for you to find this picture. So do go ahead. Okay, so let's see if my technology works so that we can zoom in. So the first place we're going to look at are the people on the train. Now, if you look at those people on the train, I think it's amazing that there's no roof on the train. So they are being battered by those elements, really battered. But if we look closely, in fact, the people at the front, they even have hats on. So they are a little bit protected. The people at the back, probably the third class, I imagine, pretty exposed. So that's one set of people. So if we come out of there. Now let's look at down here. If you can see right down here, there are people on the bank. Now they seem to be dancing or waving. Are they happy? Are they panicking? We don't really know. So if you feel that you might be in that position, have a think. How do you feel? And maybe it is that mix. So the group of people there. They're certainly not alone. Certainly they've got people around them. Another little group is on this little rowing boat here that looks very civilized there. They almost look like they're drinking, I don't know, a glass of champagne in their boat. And there's a little umbrella, a little quaint umbrella that seems to be doing quite a good job of protecting from the elements. But what's interesting is that little boat is heading away from where the action is. So that boat is heading back towards the city, but it's heading back towards the sunshine, but it's also heading away from the action. Now, another little group, which, to be honest, I'm not sure whether we will find, because when I looked for them earlier, they were tricky to see. But there are people working in the fields here. They're not very easy to see, but people working and with very traditional tools. So they're working with tools. They're working really hard day in, day out, and they're slaving away in the fields. They seem a little bit removed from the action there. And then finally, there is, if we look very carefully, now I'm not an art expert at all, but I did watch a little video on this in the National Gallery, and there is a hare which, for those who are not native English speakers, it's like a rabbit, a very fast rabbit. So here, somewhere in here, there is, if you can see just there, that is actually the hare. Now the hare is running away from the train. So, is he running because he's just faster? Is it a game? Is he running for his life? How does he feel? So the other places that you might want to consider, do you feel like you're standing on the bridge here? Do you feel like you're up in the sky, as I said, looking down on this scene? So I'd just like you to think about all of that. So that's the first question. Where do you feel you are right now with your leadership? And then secondly, and this is the important one, where would you like to be? So where do you feel you are right now? And where would you like to be? So I'm going to leave that with you. And some of these questions, I don't expect you to have answers straight away. It's a case of asking questions that you can then maybe come back to and keep coming back to. Okay. So moving on, what is courage? Now, I think when we're thinking about courage, I think what Mark Twain said many years ago is very interesting. So he said, courage is resistance to fear. It's mastery of fear, not absence of fear. And I think this is a very interesting idea when we're thinking about leadership. And some clients, they come to me and they say they don't want to feel afraid anymore. They don't want to feel like they've got a knot in their stomach. They don't want to feel that they have that heavy weight of responsibility. Unfortunately, it's just not possible. Unfortunately, it's really not possible to get rid of that fear in leadership. And as you progress in leadership, as you all know, as you take on more responsibility, that fear never goes away, because you have people's lives in your hands. You are directly responsible for how many people are feeling and acting on a daily basis. So the fear isn't going to go away, but what can change is how we see that fear and how we deal with it. So in the last few years, I've worked with a number of clients in France in the corporate world who absolutely hate giving presentations in English. Now you can imagine in a second language, it's stressful to stand up and do a presentation. Many of my clients here in Belfort work for an American company, and it's not easy to stand up and do a presentation in English. So many of them, they say to me, I say to them, well, so how do you cope with it normally? And many of them will say to me, well, they hate it. They know they hate it, but they make themselves do it. They push themselves through it. Now, I would say that is one strategy. It does work to an extent, but I would like us to explore today a way to actually have other techniques to cope with that kind of fear, that feeling of uncertainty that can be uncomfortable. So what's the problem with pushing through it? You know, this idea of let's fake it till we make it, which is a very popular one. Well, partly because it's just stressful. It's really stressful to be doing that every single time. And each time it kind of reinforces the proof that we find it difficult, that we find it stressful. And it's actually usually not that successful anyway, because if we're very stressed in a situation, we're probably not going to be as good as we can be. So willpower, I would say, is an option, but it's not maybe the best one. I'm not saying that a little bit of determination isn't useful. I think it really is, and it's really necessary. But you need to have a solid base. You need to have a solid base from where you can use that extra little bit of determination. It's not the only strategy that we have. So this week, I'd like to really suggest to you to think about courage differently, to think about courage as being able to cope with fear, to work with fear, and very importantly, to recognize it and then move forward with it. So it's not exactly the same as feel the fear and do it anyway, but it's not far off. It is about recognizing it, seeing that as data, and we're going to come back to that, managing our emotions, seeing emotions as data, coming back to this idea that we can then take a step back, we see the data, we use it in an appropriate way. So I think that, many of you, I'm sure you do have fear about certain aspects of your leadership, with the responsibilities that you have. Maybe not all the time. I hope not all the time, but I'm sure there are times when you are fearful or uncertain about certain aspects. And I would like you to just think about that, and just make a quick note of anything that is fearful for you in particular at the moment, and we're going to come back to that as we go through. But maybe you're thinking, well, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not scared. And maybe you know the book, Going on a Bear Hunt. Now, this is if you have small children in the UK, or you're a teacher, primary school teacher in the UK, I'm pretty sure you will know this book. And what is repeated in this book is, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. And maybe you're thinking you're not scared, you're not afraid of anything. What I would like us to think about now is what fear can look like, because it's not always the clammy hands, the knot in the stomach. It can be a lot of other things, and quite often it's what we're saying to ourselves in our heads, and this is what really interests me. So it could be, for example, it went wrong last time. So I did this meeting, and it was a disaster. It went wrong last time. It's not going to work the next time. So this idea of it went wrong last time, it's not going to work this time. So that idea of using evidence from the past to say it's not going to work, it's going to be a problem. Another thing that I do hear is that people will say, well, I'm not the right type of person to be a leader. I'm not the right type. Now that is also really about fear as well, because we don't know. And anyway, I think everybody has the potential to be a leader. We don't have to be a certain type of leader. So this feeling of, well, I don't believe I am the type of person to be a good leader or a courageous leader. Let's keep that in mind and notice that. Other things that people say, things like, I don't like confronting people. I don't want to look arrogant. I'm not a leader, I'm a doer. If I'm honest about not having the skills, people will think less of me. Another one that's an interesting one, I should be able to do everything I ask my team to do. This fear of not being expert at everything. And now this is one that's an interesting one, because actually it's easy to blow out the water. You just think of any CEO of a big company and ask, well, can they do everything? Absolutely not. Can any head teacher do everything? Can any head teacher cook 600 meals every day? Probably not. So this idea that we have to be able to do everything that we're asking other people to do, this can really block people from being their courageous selves in their leadership position. Finally, the one that is often at the root of it is the I'm not good enough. And however you formulate that. So what I would like you to just note, and I'm not going to ask you to share this, is do any of those phrases resonate with you? What does having fear look like or sound like for you? And I'd just like you to write that down. And just give me a little thumbs up when you're done. Now this is going to look different for everybody. And notice the recurring thoughts, because it's often it's those little nagging, it's that inner voice that's saying to us something that deep down we probably know it's not right, but it's there anyway, and it can stop us. So make a note of that. And actually, it's the first big step. Write it down and physically kind of move it away. Okay. So what do we do about all this? So how to exercise your courageous muscle. And you all have one, we all do. But exercising it, I've chosen that word very carefully because this does take practice. And it's quite easy to be pushed back if we're not careful. So it does take a bit of practice, and it's something that's really good if you're able to talk to your team about this. It's something that's great to do as a team, to think think about this and to promote it generally, and to think about developing this courageous muscle. And we're going to come back to this later in the week when we're talking about developing a courageous culture in our team, which is absolutely vital. So the first thing, which we've already mentioned, is that it is not willpower. This is not positive thinking. I'm not really a fan of positive thinking. Being positive, yes, but positivity as a way of steamrolling our thoughts and our negative thoughts. Personally, I think that it's a temporary solution. It's not a solution that's going to give you that long-term basis that we mentioned. So if you find yourself doing that, if you find yourself thinking, well, just fake it till I make it, just be positive, just recognize that that's what you've done. That's the first thing. Recognize that. Number 2, and this is such an important one, is find the real purpose behind the task that you're finding difficult. For example, having difficult conversations. We all have to have those difficult conversations. Maybe you've got to have a meeting, you've got to give some bad news. It's going to be difficult. The other person is going to be upset. They're maybe going to feel that it's not just whatever it is. Having that difficult conversation, of course, we're not going to necessarily feel very courageous about that. But if we can go back to thinking what the purpose of it is, so really thinking, well, okay, the choice is either I have the conversation or I don't have the conversation. So the first question is, well, what's the purpose? If we do it, if we have this conversation, what will we have as a result? And perhaps a more important question is, if we don't do it, what will we lose? And I think tapping into that purpose, tapping into that reason, often it can give us the push that we need, that courage that we need, that we know it's the right thing to do. And when we know it's the right thing to do, we can then focus on trying to make it the best outcome possible. And that probably means some preparation, and we're going to come back to that later in the week. Finally, I would say make a conscious decision. Try to analyze what you're thinking. Try to notice and observe that inner voice that's maybe saying, well, I'm not good enough, and that's not me. And notice that, and then think, what do I want to do? And I think going back to wanting to do something, this gives us great courage, because when we want to do it, when we know that this is the right thing to do, this is where the value is, this is the purpose of what we're trying to do, when everything is aligned, that gives us courage to take that step. So those 3 things. Firstly, let's not fake it till we make it. Secondly, let's ask the question, what will we lose if we don't do it? And thirdly, let's decide, do we really want to do it? Make it a positive decision if we can. So just to recap this evening. So we've talked a little bit about what is a courageous leader. We've talked a little bit about where you are in your leadership, where you feel you are and where you want to be in terms of in terms of the picture there. And so what does courageous look like to you? Do you want to be high up in the clouds looking down? Do you want to be in the fast train, able to cope with the wind and whatever the speed? So where do you want to be? Or do you want to be that hare right out in front? Finally, how can we start exercising that courageous muscle? How can we start doing that tomorrow? So those are basically the main themes of today. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. Now I realise you are very, very busy people. It's homework in the loosest sense of the word. I would just like you to have a think about 3 areas of your leadership where you are not feeling fully courageous at the moment. And I'd like you to look back at the exercise that we've just looked at about how to exercise your courageous muscle. And could you use any of those? Now, maybe the answer is no. That's okay. We're going to be covering lots of other things during the week, but maybe you could start putting some of that into practice. Okay, just before we go into discussion, I'd just like to ask you, and please feel free to put your microphones on. We are still live on Facebook. Just for hello, Siobhan. I've just seen you come, seen that you're there. That's great. So just to let you know, we are still live on Facebook. If you'd prefer not to be on that in that group there speaking. Otherwise, please put it in the chat as well. So what have you gained from the session tonight? Any takeaways, any thoughts, anything that applies to you that you feel that you can use straight away? Any ideas at all? Just please unmute yourselves and do jump in. So Françoise, we all have fears. Yes, absolutely. We all do. Anyone like to jump in?
I think for me, hopefully, it's the fact that I probably am faking it quite a lot to make it, and that maybe that is quite a stressful way to live day to day, especially at the moment.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. And that faking it till we make it, I think it's become, I don't know whether it's so ingrained in other cultures, but I think in British culture, it has become very ingrained, this idea of faking it till we make it. And personally, I think, as I've said, it's not a solid solution. Absolutely. So does what we've talked about today, does that help with that? Oh, I've lost you there. Okay.
I think it does. I think the thought of actually trying to focus a lot behind on the purpose behind it and making a conscious decision to do something.
Great. Brilliant. Well, we're going to say goodbye to Facebook, and then we will just continue our discussion. So just give me 2 seconds to.
Maybe navigating for the training. Maybe.
Yeah.